Hi everyone. I want to talk you through the College Board updates and the new AP exam rubric. So let's say you are on our Edmodo page. You can go to my recent post and click on this right here, which will take you to the AP exam update. So you can see if you scroll down to Thursday, May 21st, you can see our exam, World History Modern. That's the new name of the class this year because they cut out an earlier part of the history. So World History Modern at Eastern Time, 2 p.m. So you're going to be taking your exam Thursday, May 21st at 2 p.m. They'll tell us soon how to access the website and everything like that, so stay tuned. Then if you scroll down to History, AP World History Modern, you click there, you can see all the information. Students will be given 45 minutes to read and respond to the question, which is the DBQ, and then you have 5 minutes to upload your response. You can upload it either from the forum that they give you online if you type it on the computer, or you can handwrite it, take a picture of it, and submit it. So you have 45 minutes to write a DBQ and then 5 minutes to upload it. It's a modified DBQ. We're going to go over the prompt, or we're going to go over the rubric together. You can look here. The only topics that will be covered on the DBQ is anything that we covered from units 1 to 6. So we had perfect timing. We literally had just finished unit 6 when we went out for coronavirus. And so those are the only units that you'll be tested on. Later on, I'll go through a plan for you guys with your notes for how to use open notes during the exam. But for now, I want to look at the rubric. So if you read this, it says a modified DBQ. The prompt for the 2020 modified DBQ may be derived from any of units 1 through 6 and will include 5 documents instead of 7. The rubric will be lightly modified to match the reduced number of documents, awarding 1 point for using 2 documents and an additional point for using 4 documents. An additional point will be awarded for effectively incorporating a second piece of outside evidence into the argument. Students can earn up to 2 points for sourcing, 1 point for each document. So let's look at this rubric because they said it was simplified, but what it is they are giving you extra points for doing a little bit of extra work because they reduce the number of documents that you have to use. So let's look at the points that have not changed. Thesis. You either get 1 point or no point. It's the same exact thing as we've done on all of our other DBQs. So your thesis, you get 1 point if you respond to the prompt with a historically defensible claim that establishes a line of reasoning. The key here is responding to the prompt. You have to make sure that the first thing you do is spend a couple minutes really looking at the prompt and seeing what is this prompt asking me to look at. So you have to respond to the prompt with a defensible claim, meaning you have to be making some type of argument. If you can't think of a clear argument, use what we call qualifiers. So, railroads affected European empires, but they more strongly affected empires that were building on their own. So you can use qualifiers like more, most, and anything like that. So that's your thesis point. You should put your thesis in your introduction, and then if you have time, you can rewrite it in your conclusion. The second point that did not change at all is context or contextualization. Context is where you describe a broader historical context relevant to the prompt. So context should also be in your introduction. It should be what you open your essay with, and it should be at least 3 to 4 really rich, complex sentences describing how all the history surrounding the topic of the prompt. How did you get to that topic of the prompt? What do people need to know to really understand the argument that you're making about the topic of the prompt? So you should do pre-context in your introduction, and if you have time, you can do post-context in your conclusion, just to make sure that you get that point. So those have not changed. The area that changed big time is evidence. You can get up to 5 points with evidence. And here are the different levels of points. You can get 1 point for evidence if you use the content of at least 2 documents to address the topic of the prompt. So if you simply just summarize 2 documents in your DBQ and you cite them with parentheses, you put Doc 1 or Doc 2. If you simply just summarize and cite them, you can get 1 point, showing that you used evidence. However, you can get an extra point if you support your argument using 2 documents. So we've seen this before. If you simply just summarize a document, 2 documents, you get 1 point. However, if you use the ideas from the documents to support your argument, then you get that extra point. And you guys have all pretty much been getting that on your DBQs. The thing to keep in mind is if your thesis is no good, this point is really hard to get because it's really hard to support an argument with documents if you don't really have a good argument. So focus a lot on making that argument really good, and then your evidence will fall into place. In order to get this point, I suggest doing really quick brainstorming where you do buckets for your thesis. So you have maybe 2 body paragraphs because it's such a short DBQ now. You have 2 body paragraphs. Pick out what those topics are going to be. Pick out evidence or documents that could go under each one, and then make sure that you follow that outline while you're writing, and that should get you this point. Okay, here's where you can get another point, and I think all of you can do this. If instead of using 2 documents, you use 4 documents, you can get this extra point. So for the sake of our class and our students, I'm going to highly encourage you to use 4 documents to support your argument. If you want to give yourself extra insurance, you can use all 5 documents. It just might be really hard in 45 minutes. But if you read all 5 documents and you understand them really well, then definitely try to use all 5 of them in your argument. If you struggle with timing, like really, really struggle with timing, you might forego this point. I know that's going to be hard, but you might forego this point and you might just focus on getting these 2 just to make sure that you can also focus on context and thesis and these points down here. Okay, here is where I think a lot of our work is going to be done. So I mentioned in an Edmodo post on the Railroad DBQ that a lot of people struggled with their use of outside evidence, and we were kind of hoping it would be taken off the DBQ rubric for modified, and now they've actually added points to it. And I think if you work on this, you can get both of these points. So for this part of the rubric, you get 1 point if you use at least 1 additional piece of outside evidence that's relevant to the argument and relevant to the prompt. What I'm really going to encourage you to do is to look at this DBQ as a combination of a document-based essay and a long essay. Just a long essay where you write down information that you know from studying and from your head. So you get 1 point if you use outside evidence to support your argument. What I'm going to suggest you do is pick outside evidence that ties directly to 1 or 2 of the documents and put it in that paragraph. So I want you to potentially have 2 body paragraphs, and each body paragraph maybe you could have two documents that you use for evidence and then one additional piece of outside information that could work with the information from those documents to make a strong argument. So the railroad DBQ, the argument that I made were that some regions did empire building on their own with railroads, trying to fight off the Europeans who were also empire building. And I used the documents on Russia and the Ottoman Empire. And then I pulled outside evidence by discussing how Japan also did the same thing, trying to build railroads to keep European influence out and to compete with them. I'm going to spend a whole one of our instructional sessions from 9 to 10 a.m. on outside evidence because I think it's really important. So if you include outside evidence at least once, you get 1 point. Then they're giving you an extra point if you use a second piece of outside evidence throughout your essay. Maybe have one piece of outside evidence per paragraph. If you have a document that seems like it's really lonely and it doesn't fit anywhere and it has its own paragraph, maybe you can use two pieces of outside evidence to pair with that document. So if you really struggle with outside evidence and you find time to only write one of it, that's okay. You still get 1 point. If you have time and you really practice it, maybe you can put two pieces of outside evidence in your DBQ. So again, we'll work on that together. And I'm going to give you a strategy for how to have your notebook ready or your AMSCO ready to search for pieces of outside evidence. The strategy I'm going to give you would involve having your notebook or your AMSCO with tabs, little tabs. They have like Post-it notes that are really thin that are just for you to tab certain pages. So I don't know if you guys are going grocery shopping or ordering stuff from Amazon, but that might be something you would want to purchase is Post-it note tabs so that you could mark pages that you could turn to really quickly on an open note exam. Oops. I don't know who that is. Okay. So the last part of the rubric is really stuff that we've already looked at, and I think you guys will do really well on this. We've practiced a lot on sourcing the documents, looking at the who, what, when, where, and why of the documents. And that's really the last part of the DBQ that you guys have to focus on. So what they did for this is they cut down the requirements. You can get 1 full point on your DBQ if you source one document. If you explain their point of view, the document's purpose, the historical situation that it was written in, or the audience that was relevant to the document. So this is where you take those sentence frames and you say that, for the railroad DBQs, or no, let's think of I think it was the slave trade DBQs. And there was, my mind's not working right now. Basically, you take the name and the title of the person and you explain some of their motivations for writing the source. And that just helps the readers understand that you understand why that document existed at the time and why that's important to the argument. So we'll work on that during a class session as well. So to get 1 point on the exam, you only need to do that for one of the documents. However, you can get a second point here if you do that for a second document. So you only have to do the sourcing now for 2 documents. If you want to give yourself insurance, you can do it for a third document, but you might not have time. So my suggestion is do it for 2 documents. If you don't do well on one of them, at least you still get 1 point for that section. And finally, the last point is that complexity point. You can demonstrate a complex argument by showing different points of view on the topic, meaning you can have a counter argument. What the readers are really looking for is that you really understand how history is not a single answer. There's so many variables and so many arguments that can be taken on a topic, and they really want to know that you're understanding that, and they want to see that you can demonstrate those multiple arguments on a topic. You can also show complexity if you compare the topic of your prompt to another time period or another region, but you really have to write in detail about that comparison to get that complexity point. It can't just be like a one sentence add on, they won't give it to you. Also, you have to remember that that comparison is different to outside evidence. So you want to be careful with your complexity. And that's something that we can work on in an online session as well. So that's the rubric. I am really excited because you guys do so well on DBQs. I think what we really need to work on is writing practice DBQs using this new information, this new criteria, just to make sure that you are focusing on the things that you need to improve upon to feel ready for the DBQ. So here's the rubric. Take some time to look over it on your own. I'm going to post also a Heimler's history video where he walks you through the DBQ and even gives you some examples of things that will work for the DBQ and that might not work for the DBQ. I'm going to have office hours from 1:30 to 2 p.m. today on Wednesday, April 15th. So if you want to log into that, you can log in and you can ask me any questions that you might have about this DBQ. It's not, the office hours are not required. It's just for anybody who wants to chat about this DBQ. So I'll be on Zoom from 1:30 to 2 p.m. and the invite information will be on Edmodo, and I also emailed it to you. And I hope to see you guys then. Bye.